So, some of you may know that this past weekend I went to Edmonton for a family funeral. And I arranged my flight plans so that I could be back here for Celebrate Sunday on Sunday morning. Well, that's not what happened. So on the way there, everything was fine. It turns out that now it's balmy in Edmonton the way it is here, but when I was there, it was minus 20 and like major snowstorms, which was actually kind of cool because since we've moved here from Toronto 8 years ago, there has been a storm or two or three every single year, right? Even though the brochure said it never snowed here. But it wasn't quite like it was in Edmonton. Like it was cold, it was snowy, there was like snow and dirty snow everywhere. It was quite something. Even with that snowstorm, the plane that I took from Edmonton to Vancouver on Saturday afternoon, no problem. The tiny plane from Vancouver to Victoria, problem. So, I took the plane from Edmonton to Vancouver, and I was actually kind of looking forward to the 4-hour layover I had there, because when we flew to Toronto in June, Glenn and I ended up being kind of stranded at the Vancouver airport after a flight was canceled, and so we walked that airport, every single square inch of it. We got to know it really, really well, and there was this one amazing place where we ate that I thought, ooh, that's where I'm going to get dinner from. So I got my dinner, I had it was super delicious, I felt really nourished and fortified, and I headed over to the gate where my flight was supposed to take off for Victoria. And it was like, 3 hours before, so there was nobody there. So I found myself a great spot, plugged in my laptop, was charging my phone, my earbuds and everything, and then I sat down to do some work. Well, eventually, after about an hour and a half, more people started coming, it started getting noisy, and then I realized that there was a guy who was sitting next to me who was playing something on his laptop without headphones, and so everybody could hear what he was playing. And even though I was really focusing on what it was that I was working on, my attention kept veering off to what he was listening to. So I thought, okay, I'll just pop in my earbuds and I'll put on our meditation music from Elevate and Celebrate, right? So I did that, and in the background I could kind of hear whatever he was doing, but I was just in the zone and working. And then I looked at the clock and I thought, oh, it's almost time for us to start boarding. And then as I looked, I realized, oh, I actually have to be at another gate. So I have to be at another gate in a few minutes because that plane is going to take off. So I packed everything up and I walked all the way across to the other end of the airport, found out the reason that we had to go to another gate was because there were mechanical issues with the plane we were supposed to take and they couldn't fix them. So we had to take a different plane entirely. So walked all the way to the other side, and it was one of these, you have to go outside, because it's a prop plane, go and sit down, and I have a window seat, which I was really excited about, and I look to the right and there's the propeller there. And I just have this fleeting thought. I wonder what would happen if that didn't work. Okay, that's it. Then I pop in my earbuds, I'm listening to Game of Thrones, and we take off and we're flying, and I'm kind of dozing at the same time because it's quite late at night. And then all of a sudden, I can hear and sense that people on the plane are murmuring and things are happening. And so I pull out one earbud, and I can hear the captain saying, we apologize, but one of the engines has gone. I look, and I'm like, oh, sure enough, it's not working. The right engine has gone. We are trained to fly with one engine, so please don't worry, but we have to turn back and go to Vancouver. We can see the lights of Victoria, and people are like, but it's right there, and it's like, sorry, we got to go back. So we turn back around, and we're going back around, and then we end up in this fog. And even though the pilot ends up saying, and now we begin our descent into Vancouver, there's like nothing, just fog. And I'm like looking out the window at all of this fog, the engine's not working, and the lady behind me goes, this is really disconcerting, isn't it? And I just turned to her and I said, you know what, I don't really know what's happening. I'm just going to keep listening to my book. But what it was for me, everybody was pretty calm. They were frustrated that we didn't land in Victoria, and it was like so close, but we had to turn back to Vancouver. But for me, this was one of those moments where you really had to trust. The pilots who were sitting in the cockpit, they couldn't see anything, so they had to trust their navigation, their guidance system, right? We have a guidance and navigation system within us that sometimes we really need to trust because we can't go by what is happening around us, right? So this was one of those like, oh, this is such a great illustration. This is such a new thought, teachable moment, right? So, fine. We end up landing and we land and they say, okay, it's going to take about 15 minutes to fix it and then we're going to be on our way back to Victoria. Well, that doesn't happen, and then they get everybody off the plane. We have to walk all the way back to the other end. No, sorry. First, we end up in the, they say stay in the boarding lounge because we're going to get another plane, and then you guys are going to be on your way to Victoria. So by now, people are getting cranky, and they're tired because it's late at night. Our flight was delayed already. We ended up turning around, and then half an hour and a half. They start coming around, does anybody want any water? And people are like, oh, thank you. They're being so gracious, like as gracious as they possibly can. And then at that time, I also thought, well, my devices are starting to run out. I better charge my phone and my earbuds. But people were sitting by the charging station. And so I thought, I'll keep my phone, but I'll plug in my earbuds. Don't forget my earbuds. Okay? So there's stuff going on. I call Glenn to let him know that this is happening. And then all of a sudden, as water's being poured and people are feeling cranky, and I'm on the phone with Glenn, all of a sudden the crew walks out in their coats with their bags, and that's it. And then they tell us, sorry, the flight has been grounded, which means canceled. We're going to give you hotel vouchers, and we're going to book you on other flights tomorrow. And I'm thinking, I'm supposed to be in Victoria tomorrow morning for Celebrate Sunday. Don't forget your earbuds. And so they're making sure everybody stays until they get their hotel vouchers, so they know where they're supposed to go. They know where our baggage is going to be coming. And so don't forget your earbuds is what I'm focusing on. And then eventually they're like, okay, go. And then it's a mad scramble for everybody to get their hotel vouchers because apparently there aren't enough for everyone. So go to get the bags to go to the hotel voucher, or to go to the hotel. I get to the hotel, I set my stuff down, and by now it's about 2 a.m, and I'm thinking, I'm on a flight at 10:15 tomorrow night. I'm not getting to Celebrate. I have to focus. There's all this stuff going on, but right now I need to focus on making sure that Celebrate can happen without me. So that means I got to start emailing people, I got to start texting people, and I don't want to wake anybody out of a sound sleep, so I'm going to send all these messages and let people know this is what's happening. Glenn's the only one in the know so far. And then at 7 a.m, I'm going to get up and I'm going to start calling people and asking, can you do this, can you do this, can you do this, right? But I better charge my stuff first, right? Plug it in and make sure that I have power and everything during the night. I forgot my earbuds. Forgot my earbuds with my phone charger because that's what I was using. But I had my laptop, and so at least I had that. So, wow, what was I focusing on? First I'm like, I wonder what would happen if, well, I got to find out. And then don't forget your earbuds, forgot the earbuds, and now I get to find out what happens when I don't have a phone charger and I need to be calling people and getting a hold of people and organizing things. So this was another one of those, now it's time to trust. Now it's time to turn within, to be still and know, to move past all of the things that are happening around me and just focus on what I know, on who I am, and trust that everything is unfolding perfectly. And so what this meant for me, and it took a few days to get out of the being in the middle of it all to sort of pull back and see, this is really kind of neat. And it reminded me of a workshop that I was in with my friend and fellow ministerial grad, Rick Tamlin, who is an awesome coach and does such amazing workshops. And what he did in one workshop was he said, okay, everybody, pull out a piece of paper, take a marker, and just start making dots. Just start putting dots all over the piece of paper. He gave us 30 seconds, okay, that's enough. All those dots is what we know. All those dots would fit on the head of a teaspoon. What we don't know, the infinite possibilities that we haven't yet experienced that are available to us every moment of every day, that's all the space in between. And so that is the title of my talk today, the space in between. How often do we get so caught up about all of these things that fit on the head of a teaspoon, all of the relative or the conventional, all of the stuff. This is what we try to create our life from. But there's all of this. And all of this, in addition to what this is, all of that is who and what we are. And so going back to flying in the fog and just trusting the guidance system, going back to the hotel and, oh, well, this is what's happening, so I better just focus on what it is I can control, what it is I can do, because Celebrate Sunday has to happen tomorrow with or without me. And so this space in between also reminded me of a jazz musician, a jazz drummer that Glenn and I got a chance to see many years ago while we were still in Toronto, pre-Milana time, so this is well over 20 years ago. His name is Idris Muhammad. And Peter's nodding his head. And so he was an amazing drummer and band leader, and he was known for embracing the space in between the notes. And at the time when I heard this, I thought this was such a cool concept, because what it told me was that it's not the notes, it's not the beat necessarily that is what we feel, it's what happens in between. It's the relationship from one to the other. And if we focus on that more, then wow, life can feel and look really different. And so what this also reminded me of, which was so cool when Kelby said, I think we're going to play a Duke Ellington song tonight, is when I used to volunteer at Jazz 91.1 FM in Toronto, which is the 24-hour jazz station. And someone, I can't remember who it was, one time said that Duke Ellington was reported as saying that clapping or snapping on the ones and threes is aggressive. And I thought this was the most hilarious thing, because it meant you got to clap on the twos and fours, right? And so I actually found a series of 3 videos that were put together, and it's on YouTube. And so Duke Ellington is in there when he's in front of an audience and he's snapping, and he's just like super casually cool saying, you know, that it's not on the ones and the threes, but you got to go down. So you're on the 2 and the 4 and the 2 and the 4. And if you want to look a little bit cooler when you're doing that, then, and I don't know if I can do the coordinating, you got to like cock your head a little to the left at the same time and drop the ear as you're, you know, there it is right there. Yeah. Right? And then there was another little video. And, oh my gosh, am I going to remember her name? Dawn Hampton? Is that a cabaret singer? Okay, yes, okay. So she had a little blurb on there about how clapping on the ones and threes sounds corny. And she said, we got to get you folks out of the corn patch and into the street. Because when you clap on the 2s and 4s, then you're in the street, feeling the rhythm in between. Instead of feeling the rhythm, it hurt, you know, to do what she was doing. So I just thought this was really neat that you brought in a Duke Ellington song, because I thought that was such a funny thing. But it talks to the space in between and not focusing on the obvious or the thing that's right in front of you, but opening up to those possibilities that are in between that make life so much more interesting. And so that's what the whole weekend for me ended up being, because I ended up coordinating 5 people to come in on Saturday, Kelby included, very last minute, to fill in so that Celebrate Sunday could go off without a hitch. So what an amazing adventure, and what an opportunity to really lean into all the spaces in between rather than focusing on what would normally just fit on the head of a teaspoon. So as we realize that we are so much more vast and capable than what we've been focusing on until now, the space in between provides context for how we navigate what we choose to know, feel, and experience, the stuff that fits on the head of a teaspoon, going forward. And so it's not so much about focusing on the stuff that's on the teaspoon, or focusing on the fact that there's fog outside the window and we're landing but we don't know where the ground is, or that I've forgotten my earbuds and my charger at the airport, because there's always, always, always this internal guidance system, the information that is available in the spaces in between that is always, always present for us to lean into. So my question to you is, if all we know all we're familiar with really fits onto the head of a teaspoon, and then there's all of this that is available to us, what is it that you're going to focus on from now on? Because I guarantee you, if you start to shift your focus, even from time to time, and focus on all of this, how you experience this is going to change. Thank you, and so it is.